Hi, I'm Old Norse Specialist Jackson Crawford. On my Patreon-supported YouTube channel about Norse language, myth, runes, etc., I have an infrequently continued series in which I read an entire poem from the Poetic Edda in the original Old Norse and explain the Old Norse as I go. This is intended mostly as a service for intermediate to advanced learners of Old Norse, inasmuch as my aim is not really to produce a polished translation that one could publish. For that, you can look at my translation of the Poetic Edda, or specifically the Wanderer's Havamal for that poem. But rather my intent is to give you something that helps you to read the Old Norse yourself. Perhaps draw your own conclusions about it. I'm not as committed to my own conclusions in this series. The particular poem that I want to do today is one of the shortest in the Poetic Edda, but also, other than probably Havamal with Odin's wisdom and mysteries and Völuspá discussing the beginning and end of the world, probably the most famous, so I guess the third most famous poem in the Poetic Edda by my guess. It's interesting that it is so short. It actually kind of feels longer when you think about the story, maybe because it tends to stick out in people's minds. And this is Þrymskviða, the story of how Thor loses his hammer and dresses up as a bride to trick the giant. Jotun is really the preferred term, given that these beings aren't larger than the gods, they don't look different from the gods. The Jotun Thrymmer, who has taken it into giving it back to him, or well, he doesn't give it exactly. So adding this to the Deep Read series of the Poetic Edda was the suggestion in particular of my Patreon supporter, Lorian. So thank you very much, Lorian, for that. And in this video, I'm going to do what I usually do, except for the Havamal, where I produce my own edited text in Old Norse. I'm going to read from Jonas Kristinsson and Vesteinn Olesson's edited text in Þrymskviða from the Íslensk Fornright series. Well, let's go with Þrymskviða. Now, it's interesting to note that the story of Thor losing his hammer isn't retold anywhere but in this poem. There's a lot of discussion about how old the poem might be. Some people see the lack of any reference to it outside of itself as a sign that it's young. I think it's probably the best argument for it being young, and by young, presumably even written after the conversion in about 1000. But a decent argument for it being old is that you have words alliterating that would not have alliterated in the 1200s when the manuscript, the Codex Regius, was written down. And by the way, this poem appears only in the Codex Regius manuscript. It's not one of the ones like Grímnismál where there's another manuscript that has it. So for example, in the very first stanza, which I'll read for you now, Reiðr var þó Vingþór hann vaknaði og síns hamars saknaði, skeggnamat Hrista skornamat duja, reðjarðar búr að þreifask. You see that the name that's used for Thor in line 1 is Vingþór, right? His normal name is just Thor. Now, the reason you would use a name extension like Ving in Old Norse poetry is to make the name rhyme with the alliterating sound in the pair of lines, in this case, V. But then in the meter called Fornir the Slag, and I really probably need to continue my Eddic meter series, that last lift, well, it's not the last lift exactly, but the second to last or last syllable, is an unusual place to see the alliterating syllable. We would expect one on probably the first syllable, especially the first line of a poem. At any rate, somewhere else in that line. And in fact, reiðr, angry, would have been vreðr earlier on in Icelandic before the V dropped before R in Icelandic, Faroese, and a lot of Western Norwegian. Now, it's not impossible that someone could learn that traditionally a word like reyðr did alliterate with V, but I think that it's a decent argument that poems like this are actually older than, say, about 1000 when the sound change probably happened. Note that the sound change did not happen in Swedish or Danish, where you get VRED for angry. All right, so what does it say? Thor was angry when Thor he awoke, vaknaði, and missed his hammer, saknaði síns hammars. There's a lot of the ov just being filler words here for the meter, so we can pretty much ignore and ov most of the time. Notice that sakna, to miss, to feel the lack of, takes a genitive object. That's why it's síns hammars, not like sin hammar. Also notice vaknaði, saknaði, that's rhyme in the way that we would expect in a lot of modern English poetry. That has also been adduced as evidence for it being a little bit late, but I think that Norse poets were fully capable of that kind of playfulness. And it's a little bit of a playful story, and we have examples of rhyme like that in skaldic poetry that's clearly old, so I don't think that's particularly persuasive that it's young. We don't have a subject here, but we know that it's still Thor. He took to shake his beard. The took, nam, is just there to fill in the meter. Nema and roða, advise, also are used a couple times in this poem just as filler, like or ov, to fill out the line and get you to the right number of syllables. So really, he shook his beard, skeg. He shook his hair, score. And here we have reð as a filler verb. He advised to, he did. He felt, þreifask, around himself, sick, with the sk being folded into the verb there. Notice the name that's used for him here, Jarðar bur. That means simply son of Jord, or earth, who is his mother. Stanza 2, og hann that orða alls fyrst hvað. Hörðu nú, Loki, what ek nú mæli. Egi veit Jarðar hvergi ne upphimens, os stolin hamri. And he spoke, og hann hvað, first, of all, als, of words, or the first als is kind of English, first of all, so he spoke of words, still seems kind of weird, but idiomatically this all works together in Old Norse. And he, Okan, spoke kvad, of words, or the first of all, als first, might be a better way to prose order that. Hear now, Loki, this is an imperative, right, a command form, hear, hur, with the word thu, you, appended to it. Hear now, Loki, what I now say, what mali, which no thing, person, egi, missing something like mother, right, person here. No one, neither of earth, hvergi Jarðar, nor of upsky, uphimen, knows, veit. So hear what I say, which no one knows. A god is stolen with regard to his hammer, os stolen hamri. When you steal in Old Norse and then passivize that sentence, the thing that's stolen is the person it's stolen from, and the thing that got stolen is in the dative. So he has been stolen from with regard to his hammer. Now, idiomatically in English, we would say his hammer got stolen, but that is not the idiomatic Old Norse. Stanza 3. Gengu þeir fagra froju tuna, og hann that orða alls fyrst hvað. Muntu mer froja, fjadar hams ljó, ef ek min hamar matak hitta. They went or walked to the fair, like, enclosures, homes is probably the best way to take tune. This is the English word town. In modern Icelandic, this basically just means hayfield, but let's say homes. They walk to the fair homes, really kind of missing a till here, the two, of Froya. We could also, could we take that as fair Froya? Not really, I don't know how to make the A make sense as a genitive. And he spoke of words, first of all, will you, muntu, Froya, loan me, ljó mer, so you loan to somebody who's in the dative, the feather skin, fjäderhamps, and what you loan is in the genitive. So will you loan me the feather skin? If I, evek, might matak, there we have the ek appended a second time to mata, something you'd be really familiar with if you've read Havamal. If I might meet my hammer, find my hammer. And by the way, given the meter form of this log, we would expect another syllable in that third to last line. And if you read it as fjäderhamps lea, which would be an earlier form of this verb in Old West Norse, like Icelandic, Faroese, Western Norwegian, an old long EA becomes a J long A. That's why it's Old Icelandic sjö, C, versus like Old Swedish sea, modern Swedish se. You would actually get that extra syllable, so it's another argument for being a little bit old, because probably the composition of the poem precedes that vowel change. Now I read Froya Kvað. Froya said, stanza 4, Þó mynda ek gefa þér þótt or guli væri, og þó selja at væri or silfri. I would give it to you, ek mynda gefa þér, though it were, we can kind of supply something like made of, out of gold, væri or guli. Note that though, thought, the word for though, in its two forms is really kind of unnecessarily repeated here. And I would give, ok, this is like a third repetition of though, I would give selja. Selja doesn't specifically mean sell in the context of like a monetary transaction, like buy, sell in English. It could just mean straight up give, though it were made out of silver. So the though makes sense in line 2 or 4, but we get it in line 1, 2, or 3. So I would give it to you, though it were, although it isn't, made out of gold. I would give it to you, though it were, though it isn't, because his subjunctive's right, the counterfactual is made out of silver. Stanza 5, Flow Thor Loki fjäderhammar dundi, uns för utan kom åsa garda och för innan kom jotna hema. Then Loki flew, the feather skin made noise. This is dunya. It's like English din, make a noise. Until uns, he came kom outside of the enclosures of the gods, Osa Garda. So here's the name of their realm, Osgard or Asgard, treated as two separate words, as component words, and came within the homes of the Jotnar. Again, their realm being treated as its two separate component words. Thrymr, stanza 6, Sat o haugi Thorsadrotten, grojum sinum gulbon sneri, och morum sinum mon jabnaði. So Thrymr sat on a burial mound, something Jotuns do a lot for whatever reason. Lord of Jotuns, typically a more negative word for the Jotnar or giant kind. He turned snöri, golden bands, collars perhaps, on his dogs. So we've seen him groyum, typically more of a negative word for dog. And he evened the mane on his horses, mar, like our word mare, but not gender specific in this case. So he's, taking care of his animals. He's kind of blithely unconcerned. And Thrymr said, Thrymr Kvad, stanza 7, What med asum, what med olvum, hui tu ein komin I Jotunheima. Ilt med asum, ilt med olvum, hefur thu hlorida hamar folgen. What is with the gods? What is with the elves? Why are you, thu, come alone, komin ein, into the homes of the Jotuns, the Jotunheima? Notice this is an example of Old Norse using verbs like come, verbs of movement, with to be instead of to have to form their perfect tenses, kind of like Older English, I am come with the dawning of the day. And now the second half of this actually is Loki speaking. It's bad with the gods, it's bad with the elves. Have you hidden Hlorridi's hammer? Hlorridi, which etymologically, for whatever reason, means almost certainly pig rider. is one of Thor's names that can be used if we need to have Thor alliterate with H. We have no idea why he would be the pig rider. He's never referred to as a pig rider elsewhere. In fact, the pig rider you would think from the stories you do know would be Freyr or Froya, lost to the sands of time. But it is a name of Thor, for whatever reason. Stanza 8. Ek hefi hlorriða hamar folgen åtta rostum för jord neðan. Han engi maður aftur heimtir nema fyrir mer froju at kvan. I have hidden, ek hefi folgen, Hlorriði's hammer, Thor's hammer. 8 rost, and this is a long unit of measurement. A little bit hard to know exactly what to picture here, but because of the general sense of length, I like to say just miles, 8 miles, rostum, below the earth, für neðan jord. No man, engi maður, claims it again, brings it back, heimtir after, and then the han there is the accusative, and that means the hammer. Unless someone, that's no stated subject, should bring, this is a subjunctive because it's a little bit counterfactual, a little bit potential, it's not an actual thing happening. Someone should bring nema fyri to me, mer, Froya, as a wife, at kvan. Stanza 9. Fló Thor Loki fjadar hamar dundi uns för utan kom jotna hema och för innan kom Åsagarða. Mötti han Thor miðragarða och that han orða alls fyrst kvad. So here we have a reversal of what we read in stanza 5. Loki flew then, the feather skin made a sound, until he came out of the homes of the Jotuns and into the enclosures of the gods. He met Thor in the middle of the enclosures, and he said this first of all, and the he who sang this first of all is Thor. Stanza 10, Hefir þú erindi sem erfiði, seg þú og lofti long tíðindi, oft sitjanda sogur fallask, och liggjandi lygi belir. Do you have an errand, a message, as you have difficulty, everything? Obviously idiomatic, perhaps something like, have you gotten something to show for your labors, right? Say, seg thu, another imperative with the word thu, you appended to the root of the verb. So say, in the air, o lofti, the source of English aloft, long tidings, long news, long tíðindi. Often, oft, sagas, stories, sogur, disappear, fall away, fallask, for a sitting one, sitjanda, which can take as dative. And a lying down person, a ligyandi, uses belir, lies, lygi. So talk while you're standing, because if you're sitting down or lying down, that's a case in which you might likely be forgetting a story or lying. By the way, that last half seems kind of gnomic, right? Kind of like proverbial-ish wisdom, something that you might see in Hávamál, which is unusual to see in the mouth of someone like Thor. Stanza 11. This is Loki replying. Hefi ek erfiði og örindi, Þrymr hefir þinn hamar, Þorsa dróttin, han engi maður aftur heimtir, nema honum fyrir froju at kvan. I have basically something to show, not just difficulty. Thrym has your hammer, the lord of Jotuns or Thorses. No, and then here he just replies using what Thrymr said in stanza 8, but turning into third person instead of first. No man claims that hammer again, Han again, unless someone brings him, Thrymr, Froya, as a wife. And interestingly, in 8 and 11, we get the I-umlauted and un-I-umlauted forms of kvan, kvan, wife. They're just competing forms in the language because the paradigm wound up having both I-umlauted and un-I-umlauted forms, and then speakers didn't know how to analyze that, and so they generalized one or the other. Stanza 12, Ganga þeir fagra froju at hetsa og han það orða alls fyrst kvad. Part of what makes Þrymskviða short is that there's so much repetition. Bittu þik froja brúðar líni vit skulum akatvá I Jotunheima. So they went to meet fair Froya, and he spoke First of all, this is Thor speaking almost certainly. Froya, bind you. So this is from binda. The imperative is bit with thu appended as to because the root ends in a T. So Froya, bind yourself with the linen, the clothes of a bride. Perhaps we could take this as specifically something like veil. We too, vit tvau, and notice tvau, the number 2, is in the neuter because it's a man talking to a woman about him and her. So the neuter is used because it's not exclusively men or exclusively women. We're going to come back to that. We too shall, maybe we ought to say must for skulu, which often has a stronger sense than English or modern Scandinavian shall skal. We too must drive Akka into the homes of the Jotuns. 13. Reið var þó Froya og fnossaði, allar åsa sallar under bifdisk, stokkþattit mikla menn brísinga, mig veitst þú verða vergjarnasta ef ek með þér í Jotunheima. And in the second to last line, the 2 X are not a typo. One is the first person singular present form of the strong verb akka, drive. So to say I drive, it's ek. So Froya then became angry, var reið, and she snorted fnossaði, obviously a type. The whole hall of the gods, allar osa sallar, shook under, and the great necklace at Mikla men of the Brisings, so the Brisinga man, the necklace of the Brisings is her famous necklace. The great Brisinga man jumped on her. And Thatit Mikla, that's a redundant determiner, right? That the great necklace of the Brisings. You know me to become, you really kind of expect this to be subjunctive because she's not saying that it's true. You know me to become the most yearning for men, ver gjarnasta. Ver is the word for man, like male human being specifically, whereas mother can be more neutral and referring to sex. I hope you heard that thunder, given that this is a Thor video. It's the word that's like in Werewolf, Weirgill, if you like, more archaic words like that. So you would basically, not as you would know me, but like you would think that I was the most yearning for men, the most lustful, most promiscuous, which is a bad thing for a woman's reputation here. If I drive with you into the homes of the Jotuns. Stanza 14. Sen voru asir allir og þingi og åsenjor allar og móði og það redu ríkir tívar hve þeir hlóriða hamarum söti. Soon the Asir were all at a meeting, a thing, and all the goddesses Olsenjur in speech. They were all talking. And the powerful gods, Rikir Tivar, counseled about that, right? Exchanged advice, exchanged words, Redum thought, how they, hwe there, would seek Söti, the hammer of Hlorithir, Thor. 15. Þokvatat heimdalar hvítastar osa, vissi hann vel fram sem vanir aðrir. Bindu ver Thor brúðar líni, hafi hann nit mikla men brísinga. Then Heimdallr said it, the whitest of the Asir. Notice, first of all, wheat, starting with an H, as it still does for me in English, white, right? Alliterates with Heimdallr, and the color white is often used, although more in descriptions of women, sometimes in descriptions of men, to imply attractiveness. So Baldur is also described as, white. They don't use it to describe a skin color. It doesn't mean Caucasoid or whatever, because they don't classify skin colors that way. They don't ever talk about it, really. It does not mean skin color. It means probably handsomest. I think that is the best way to read this, given my extensive studies in Old Norse color terms. And the reason why this is chosen instead of some other word for like handsome, attractive, is because of the alliteration with H. Right? We got to have a nice poetic alliteration in Old Norse. He knew well forward, i.e. he knew the future well, like other Vanir. Now notice, 2 lines up, he's called the whitest of the Asir. But then in line 4, he's called one of the Vanir, probably to let him alliterate with line 3, Visi Vel. So is he one of the Aesir? Is he one of the Vanir? Does it not really matter to the poets of the Poetic Edda? I would say it's number 3, and that they're mostly using Vanir and Aesir as poetic synonyms to one another. Sorry that we cannot always generate a complete, detailed, what's the D&D book? Deities and Demigods, stats for all the gods that specifically lay out what they all are. Here we actually have a first-person imperative. This would be bindum, would be the sort of more formal Old Norse, but sometimes when verb forms that ended in M precede pronouns that began in a V, i.e. ver, we, vid, we too, the M is dropped, so we ought to bind ver bindum, again, first-person plural imperative command form. We ought to bind Thor then with the clothes of a bride. Let him have subjunctive, right? Jussive, let sense of subjunctive. Let him have the great necklace of the Brisings. This is still Heimdall speaking in 16. Lotum und honum hrynja lukla og kvenvaður knä falla en á brjósti breiða steina og haglega höfuð typum. Let us, still a lot of first-person imperatives here, let us, under him, hang keys, because brides wear keys to symbolize they're taking over the new house. And let, still from the first line, women's clothes, kvenvaður, vod is a word for clothing that you'd be really familiar with from Havamal. It's also actually related to the English word weed, like widow's weeds. Let women's clothes fall around his knees, and broad stones on his breast. If you think about something like in The Northman, where Nicole Kidman's character wears those big brooches, that's probably what's being talked about here, is the broad stones. And let us top typum, another first person plural imperative, craftily his head, like put some kind of women's headdress on him. All right, that's a solid halfway. Take a moment to take a message from my friends and partners at Grimfrost, and I'll be right back with the rest of Þrymskviða. Thor hvað það Thor þrúðugur oss mig munu Aesir argan kalla ef ek bindas glat brúðar líni. Then Thor said it, mighty, strong God, Oss. Aesir, the gods, will call me munu kalla mig argan, from arger, which is the ultimate sexual insult word in Old Norse, right? He's saying they'll call me effeminate, they'll call me gay, they'll call me something like that that's not traditionally associated with notions of strong masculinity. If I let, and here's a somewhat rare passive use of the SK meteor passive in Old Norse. If I let me be bound, bindask, with clothes of a bride. 18. Þó hvað það Loki lávojar sonur. Þegi þú Thor þeirra orða. Þegar munu jotnar Asgard búa nema þú þinn hamar þerum heimtir. Then Loki said it, son of Laufey, silence Thor those words, like be silent with respect to those words, shut up. The Jotnar will immediately, munu thegar, inhabit Asgard, búa Asgard, unless you, nema þú, retrieve heimtir, your hammer, then hamar for yourself there. 19. Bundu þeir Thor þó brúðar líni og inu mikla menni Brísinga. Letu honum hrynja lukla og kvenvoður knä falla, en á brjósti breiða steina og haglega höfuð typðu. So 19 restates in third person past what Heimdallr mostly said in stanza 16 in first person plural imperative. They then bound Thor with the clothes of a bride and with the great necklace of the Brisings. They let keys hang under him, and women's clothes fall around his knees, and broad stones on his breast, his chest, and they craftily topped his head. 20. Þó hvað that Loki, lávojar sonur. Mun ek ok með þér ambot vera, við skulum aka tvá í Jotunheima. Then Loki said it, son of Lavoi, I also, ek ok, will be mun vera with you, met there, a serving woman, ambot, so I'll be the serving woman with you. And remember, Loki's a shape changer. He can not just dress up as a bride, he can change shape into women or animals or just about anything he wants to, apparently. But now he throws back something that Thor said to Freyja at Thor, Vit skulum akatvau I Jotunheima. We too, using the neuter form, implying one of them is a man and one of them is a woman, must drive into Jotunheimar. Who's the woman? Is he insulting Thor, saying like, I'm still a man? You know, is Loki saying that? Or is Loki, and I think this is a lot less likely, saying, well, like, he's really become a woman, but he's talking to Thor, who's a man just dressed up as a woman. Probably the ambiguity is intended to insult Thor, but still be kind of retractable. Oh, no, that's not what I meant. Right, I'm the woman. Remember, hypermasculine society, one of the worst things you can say about a man is that he has woman-like characteristics. So, of course, obviously, a huge part of the humor of the story is that Thor is the most masculine, the most dranger of the gods, and he's having to put on a wedding dress, right? It is intended to be 98% sure, I think, the story is meant to be funny. Stanza 21. Sen voru havrar heim regnir skundir at skoklum, skuldu vel renna, björg brotnudu brannjord loga og óðin sonur I Jotunheima. Soon the goats, remember that Thor drives a chariot pulled by goats. The goats were driven home, I guess they've been out eating. They were hurried to the wagon fastenings, the skoklum. They should, or they must, run well, skuldu renna vel. Hills, cliffs, rocks broke, björg brotnudu. The earth burned with flame, Jorð brann loga. I don't know why mountains are breaking and the earth is burning. Odin's son drove Oak, past tense of Aka, which we saw at the present as Ek, into Jotunheimar. 20. Þó hvað that Thrymr Þorsadrotin standið upp Jotnar og stróið bekki. Nú förið mer froju at kvon Njarðardóttur or Nóatúnum. Then Thrymr said it, Lord of the Giants. Stand up. This is a second person plural imperative command form, right? So stand up, Jotnar, and strew the benches. The covered benches that you sit on with straw. They strew the straw. That's actually where the word straw comes from. It's the strewn thing to make them more comfortable. Now bring me nu förðmer Freyja for a wife at Kvon, Njord's daughter from Nóatún. And Nóatún is the home of Njord. It's basically just used to alliterate with his name. 23. Ganga herat gardi gulhundar kur, yxen allsvartir, jotni at gamni, fjold og ek meidma, fjold og ek menja, einar mer froju ovant þykir. Gold-horned cows, gulhundar kur, walk here at the enclosure, walk here at our place, and all black oxen for the joy of the Jotun, so presumably for his wedding feast. I own ek a multitude, fjold, of treasures, meidma. I own a multitude of necklaces, menya. Lack of Freyja, ovant froju, seems thykir to me, mer alone, or lack of Freyja alone, because it's genitive with her, seems to me. So he's saying the only thing that he lacks is Freyja. 24. Vartharat kveldi komit snemma og fjör jotna uld fram borit, ein åt oxa åtta laxa, krossir allar þegar konur skyldu, draxi vjar ver sold through maadar. All right. And it was come there early in the evening, far thar komit snemma kveldi, and ale, beer, all borne forth before the Jotnar, i.e. served to them, all from borit für Jotna. The subject here is certainly Thor alone, Ain, ate an ox, ot oxa, and 8 salmon, ota laxa. All the delicacies a la crossier, those which the women should, and then some verb like have is missing there. Siv's husband, Sivjar ver, there's that old male human being word, like in werewolf. Siv's husband, her man, drank through, so 3, and then sold is kind of an unclear large quantity of liquid, but we can probably say something like keg based on his otherwise exaggerated appetites. He drank 3 like kegs of mead. 25. Þrymskviða Thrymr Þorsadrótin war sotu brúðir bíta hvassara, saka ek brúðir bíta breiðara, ne in meira mjóð moi drekka. Then Thrymr said it, Lord of Jotnar, Thorses, where did you see sotu, so second person singular past, but with the thu appended as to, so where did you see brides bite sharper, brúðir bíta hvassara? I did not see, so here we have ek appended as k to the verb saw, and then the negative suffix a. This is, again, pretty familiar if you've read Havamal. I did not see brides bite broader, like take broader, bigger, wider bites, nor a girl, like young woman, ne moi, drink more mead, drekka meira mjóð. And the N strikes me as a filler word there in that second to last line. 26. Satin allsnotra ambot fyrir orð fan við Jotens móli. Ot vætar froja ota notum, swavar hon óð fús í Jotunheima. The all-wise serving lady, Loki, sat before, who found words van orð in response to vid, the words of Jotun, Molly Jotens. Froya ate nothing, ot vater, 8 nights, otanotum. She was so, hon var svo, madly eager into Jotunheimar, so missing some verb like to go into Jotunheimar. Notice that the mad word there, is the same as in the name of Odin himself, right? Odin, something like the mad one. And of course, the mate of poetry is Oth Rerir, the stirrer to madness, the madness of a poet. 27. Laut linu lyste at kyssa en han utan stok en langan sal. Hui ondot augu froju. Þykki mer augum eldorov brenna. He bent down laut from luta, second class strong verb, under the lina, probably again something like a veil. Hopefully a veil, otherwise it's hard to see how Thor could possibly deceive him. Lusted, listi, to kiss, desired to kiss, but he jumped away, stok utan, from stukva, the whole length of the hall, and lang and sal. And here he's saying, Thrymr is saying, why we are Froya's eyes sharp, for you augu ondo. And by the way, this is Thrymr all acting and saying, if that wasn't clear. It seems to me, Thicki mare, fire, elder, burn out of her eyes, brenna or augum. And the Eldorov is actually supplied by modern editors. It's not there in the manuscript, but it makes perfect metrical sense, and it does fill in that line. So I think basically all editors agree that Eldorov goes there. 28. Satin allsnotra ambot fyrir orðum fan við Jotens móli. Svav veterfroja ota notum svavor hon óðfús í Jotunheima. So the same first half as 26. The grandma what big eyes responses here. Loki is now saying, Froya slept not at all, swav vater, for 8 nights. She was so madly eager to go into Jotunheimar. 29. In kom in arma Jotna syster hin brúðfjór byggja Þorði. Lottu þér af hondum hringa rauða, ef þú óðlask vill ostir mínar, alla hylli. The poor sister of Jotnar, interestingly plural there, so not just Thrymr's sister, kom in, that one, hin, who dared Thorði to ask for bidya, the bride money, brúð fjör. So you bidya, ask for, pray for, something that's in the genitive. That's why it's fjör. Oh, I hope you can hear this raven. They're monitoring me because I found their nest. Let you, lottu, from hands of Hondum, red rings, rauda ringa. And again, from my studies in Old Norse color, rauder means like pure gold. Also going to have a conversation on Patreon about that particular question. This might be posted after we've done that. I don't know. Who knows? So basically, give your pure golden rings, rauda ringa, from your hands if you want to get ef þú vil odlask, like get for yourself, the SK. My loves, Osterminar, all grace, alla hylli, all like favor, kindness. 30 Þvó hvað það Þrymr þursa drótin berið in hamar brúði at vigja, legið mjolni I moja kne vigið okkar saman vorar hendi. The Thrymr said it, Lord of Jotnar, Thor says, carry in the hammer, berið in hamar, to bless Vigya, the bride, brúði. Brúði is accusative there. It's one of those weird EO stems like ux that I reviewed in a recent Old Norse lesson. Lay Mjolnir, legeth Mjolni, on the knee, I kne of the girl, Mojar. Bless us two, vigeth okkar, together, saman, by the hand, hendi, of Vor. And Vor is apparently a goddess associated with wedding vows. I am pretty sure this is the only place she's ever mentioned. And I don't count Snorri's list of goddesses because he doesn't add any information about any of them there. 31. Lórida hugari brjósti harð hugaður hamar þekti. Thrym drap hann fyrstan, Þorsa dróttin, og ett Jotuns alla lamdi. So, Hlorides, Thor's spirit, mind, heart. Hugr is used in a lot of senses, metaphorical senses, of which English would use heart. I'll say heart. It seems idiomatically most appropriate. Thor's heart laughed in his chest. The fact that it's in the chest too also kind of makes the heart translation work better. So Thor's heart laughed in his chest when that hard-hearted, hugger man recognized, felt Thekthi, the hammer, Hamar. He killed Handrap, Thrymr first, Thrym Firstan, the lord of Thorses, Jotnar, and he lamed Oklamdi, the whole family of the Jotun, alla at Jotuns. 32. Drap han ina oldnu Jotna syster, hin brúð fjör of beðir hafði, hon skellum hlaut fyr skillinga, and a hog hammars fyr hringa fjold. He killed Handrap, the aged ina oldnu, sister of Jotnar, sister Jotna, that one who had asked for the bride gift. She was allotted, right? She was sort of destined. She got hon hlaut, a blow, right? Blow, skell, instead of fear for money, skillinga, related to English shilling, right? Does that sound right? Some kind of old-fashioned British currency? I don't know, anyway. And strike of the hammer, hog hammars, for a multitude of rings, for fueled ringa, or in place of a multitude of rings, which is what she had asked for. 33. Swakom Odin Sonner ender at Hamri. In such a way, so came Odin's son back to his hammer. So he got his hammer back. All right. Well, from beautiful Colorado, thank you, Patreon, for your continued support, which means the world to me and really is what makes these videos keep coming. And to everyone out there, let me wish you all the best.